He was the only king in history who abandoned his throne, not for war, not for power, but to chase a world no one had ever seen. Before the world heard the names of Columbus, before Europe ever dreamed of crossing the Atlantic, before the maps of the world were even drawn, there stood a civilization in West Africa that radiated wealth, power, and brilliance beyond imagination. This was Mali, an empire built not by conquest alone, but by knowledge, trade, and the mastery of nature. The story of King Abu Bakr II cannot be understood without understanding the land he came from, a land that the world today barely remembers. Mali in the 13th and 14th century was not just a kingdom. It was the beating economic heart of Africa. Gold mines churned endlessly, salt caravans stretched for miles, scholars filled libraries with thousands of handwritten books, and merchants traveled across deserts and oceans carrying stories of distant worlds. The empire was shaped by the mighty Niger River, a twisting lifeline that fed cities, farms, and markets. Along this river rose cities like Timbuktu and Niani, places that later scholars would call the jewel of Africa. Imagine walking through the markets of Timbuktu, gold dust shimmering in sunlight, scholars debating philosophy, traders from Morocco, Egypt, Spain, and beyond carrying spices, cloth, copper, and rare goods. Musicians playing kora strings, children learning astronomy, caravans of camels arriving daily from the Sahara. This was the world Abu Bakr II inherited. But unlike most rulers, his eyes were not fixed on the politics of land. They were fixed on the horizon. From a young age, he was fascinated by the sea. He would sit for hours studying the movement of water, listening to fishermen speak of strange currents, and watching birds fly west and not return. He grew up hearing tales of sailors who drifted far into the Atlantic and spoke of waters that carried ships like a river. These stories shaped him. While other princes trained for battle, Abu Bakr sat with scholars, learning astronomy, geometry, navigation, and the art of reading the stars. Many believed he was different, not just a ruler in the making, but a visionary. Mali was a land of extraordinary kings, but Abu Bakr's destiny was not tied to the land he ruled. His destiny lay beyond the horizon, in a world no African king had ever seen. And so begins the tale of a ruler who would abandon the greatest empire of his age to chase a mystery across the Atlantic Ocean. A king who would sail into the unknown with thousands of men, and vanish, completely, in one single night. As Abu Bakr II grew into adulthood, his personality began to separate him from every king who came before him. Where other rulers sought power, he sought answers. Where others looked inward to control their empire, he looked outward, toward the unknown. He was a king driven by curiosity, and curiosity is the most dangerous force in the mind of a man with unlimited resources. From the moment he inherited the throne, Abu Bakr II surrounded himself not with generals and warriors, but with scholars, astronomers, navigators, and storytellers. He spent long nights in royal chambers with maps spread across the floor, candles burning low, tracing the lines of rivers, the shapes of coastlines, the direction of winds. The empire slept while he remained awake, his eyes fixed on the horizon as if it carried an answer only he could see. His obsession was the ocean. The Atlantic Ocean, what ancient sailors once called the River Sea. A place feared by many, loved by few, understood by none. To most African rulers, the ocean was simply the boundary of the world, a roaring wall of water where the known world ended and danger began. But Abu Bakr II refused to believe that the world simply stopped where the water began. He listened to fishermen who described strange currents pulling their small boats west, currents so strong that they felt like a river flowing inside the ocean. He listened to caravan traders who said birds flew far into the horizon and never returned. He listened to travelers who claimed that storms and winds did not behave the same way near the western edge of Africa. Some said the ocean became calmer. Some said it grew darker. Some claimed that land existed beyond the horizon, places where the sun sank into another world. Most kings ignored these tales, but Abu Bakr collected them like precious jewels. He asked his scholars, "If the Nile flows to the sea, then where does the sea flow?" No one had an answer. And so the king made it his mission to find out. He spent hours with astronomers learning how to read the stars, how to navigate by Orion, how to predict direction by the North Star, how to watch the sun's path to determine latitude. He studied the moon's cycles, the movement of tides, the patterns of migrating birds, and the shifting colors of the water. He asked questions that stunned his council. Is the world round? Are there other continents? What if we are not alone? To many, such questions were foolish, dangerous even, but to Abu Bakr, these questions were the keys to the kingdom of the unknown. Whispers in the royal court. Inside the royal court, advisors grew nervous. They whispered, "The king thinks too much about the sea. His heart is drifting away from the throne. He dreams of places no one has seen. What if he leads Mali to disaster?" But Abu Bakr had already made up his mind. He believed something extraordinary. If the ocean has a current, then it must flow somewhere. To him, the ocean was not a barrier. It was a road, a path that someone, someday, would follow to a new world. He believed that Mali had the knowledge, the resources, and the courage to explore what lay beyond the water. And he believed he was the king destined to lead that journey. The first questions that started everything. He asked the palace sailors, "If you sail west, does the sea drag you forward or pull you back?" They responded, "It drags us, my king, like a river flowing under the waves." He asked astronomers, "If I were to sail west, would the stars still guide me home?" They answered, "Yes, my king, the stars do not abandon a traveler." He asked scholars, "Have travelers ever returned from the western current?" The room fell silent. Finally, an old man replied, "Some sailed far, and none returned." Abu Bakr's eyes lit with fire, not fear, but possibility. The vision that changed history. Abu Bakr II came to believe that beyond the Atlantic lay another world, another landmass, another people, another destiny waiting to be discovered. He imagined vast unknown continents, rich kingdoms, lush forests, and civilizations untouched by African traders. He imagined Mali becoming not just an African empire, but a global empire, connected across the sea. He imagined building colonies in foreign lands, opening new trade routes, claiming honor for his people, centuries before Europeans would even dream of it. To most men, these were fantasies. But to Abu Bakr II, they were inevitable truths waiting to be uncovered. And so, in the quiet halls of his palace, with only candlelight and maps for company, the king began to form a plan that would shock his advisors, shake the empire to its core, and forever rewrite the story of Mali. The king would launch an expedition across the Atlantic, into the unknown, into history, and nothing, not fear, not tradition, not the weight of the crown, could stop him. The dream that lived in Abu Bakr's mind was no longer just a curiosity. It had become an obsession, a calling that echoed louder than the voices of his advisors, louder than the duties of the throne, louder than the demands of an empire. The king had made his decision. He would sail west. And so began the preparations for what history would later call the first expedition of Mali. The call to build ships. Abu Bakr summoned the finest shipbuilders from throughout the empire, men from Jenny, Timbuktu, Gao, and Niani. These craftsmen carved boats large enough to withstand the Atlantic waves, boats with reinforced hulls and sails woven from the strongest cloth available. These were not river boats, not fishing vessels, not local traders. These were ocean ships, designed for a mission no African empire had ever attempted. The king ordered 200 ships to be constructed, a number so massive that the docks of Mali became a forest of masts, a thunderous symphony of hammers, and a glowing furnace of blacksmith forges. Fishermen paused their work to admire the scale of the operation. Merchants whispered rumors. The king is planning something extraordinary. He wants to find land beyond the sea. He has gone mad. He has become a visionary. The chosen crew. Abu Bakr did not send soldiers to conquer. He sent explorers to discover. Each ship carried a carefully chosen crew. Sailors, skilled in reading the wind's navigators, trained by astronomers, scholars, to record whatever they found. Carpenters, to repair ships on the journey, farmers, who could grow food if land was found. Fishermen, to feed the fleet, messengers, to return with news. Every man was sworn to secrecy. Only the inner circle knew the true purpose. But word spreads even in the strongest empires. Soon, Mali buzzed with questions. What lies beyond the sea? Why is our king sending ships west? Is he trying to reach the world of spirits? Is he chasing myth? Yet no one dared question the king directly. The day of departure. When the expedition completed preparations, the docks overflowed with people. Women cried as husbands boarded ships. Children clung to their fathers' robes. Elders bowed and prayed for safe passage. Abu Bakr stood on a high platform watching the fleet prepare to leave. The sails rose one by one like 1,000 white birds ready to take flight. The drums of Mali thundered. Horns echoed across the riverbanks. And slowly, the first expedition drifted west on the mighty Atlantic. Months of silence. Weeks passed. Then months. People waited at the western cliffs hoping to see sails return. But nothing came. Rumors spread. A storm must have destroyed them. The ocean swallowed them whole. They found land and stayed. No one knew the truth. And then one morning, long after hope had faded, a single ship appeared on the horizon. Damaged, exhausted, and barely afloat. The crew was starving. The captain looked hollow. The captain's story. The captain collapsed before Abu Bakr II and told a story that changed everything. We followed the current west, and the sea became strange. The water dragged us forward. The waves formed a river. My ship turned back, but the others continued. Then, they vanished into the horizon. The palace fell silent. Advisors trembled with fear, but Abu Bakr smiled. The words, "a river in the sea," lit a fire inside him. For this meant something extraordinary. There was a path across the Atlantic, a path created by nature itself. He whispered, "If the sea pulls west, then it pulls toward land." The king's revelation. Most rulers would fear such news. Most would end all expeditions. Most would view the loss of so many ships as a sign from the heavens to stop. But Abu Bakr II was not like other kings. Where others saw danger, he saw opportunity. Where others saw loss, he saw direction. The captain's story confirmed the king's wildest belief. Land existed beyond the Atlantic, and now he knew exactly where to find it. The first expedition was not a failure. It was proof. Proof that the ocean was not endless. Proof that the current was real. Proof that a courageous fleet could ride it to another world. In that moment, Abu Bakr made a silent promise to himself. He would not just send another expedition, he would lead it himself. This decision would soon shock his advisors, divide his empire, rewrite African history, and ultimately lead to the greatest disappearance ever recorded in the ancient world. The story of King Abu Bakr II takes its most dramatic turn here. A moment unlike anything recorded in African royal history. A moment when a king chose curiosity over power, discovery over comfort, and the ocean over the throne. The king returns to his palace with a secret fire. After hearing the captain's story of the river and the ocean, Abu Bakr returned to his palace with a new fire burning inside him. He shut himself inside his private study chambers. Maps covered his walls. Scribes recorded ocean currents. Astronomers drew star charts across scrolls. Sailors were summoned privately at night to describe the shape of the waves, the sound of distant winds, and the pull of the western current. The palace lights burned late into the night, long after the rest of the empire slept. Everyone sensed it. Their king was changing. He no longer spoke about land, only water, only direction, only destiny. Whispers in the royal halls. Inside the court, advisors watched in fear. They whispered, "The king has lost himself to the sea. What if he abandons Mali? What if he risks the throne? A ruler cannot chase the ocean." But they did not understand Abu Bakr. He was not a king seeking escape. He was a seeker of truth. A man who believed that the world was much larger than anyone imagined. And when a visionary sees beyond the horizon, the world behind him begins to look small. The king's final question. One evening, Abu Bakr called together his most trusted scholars, navigators, and advisors. He asked them a single question. If a path exists across the ocean, should we follow it? The court froze. Some shouted no. Some trembled silently. Some bowed their heads in fear. Only one old scholar responded calmly, "My king, a path is created so that someone may walk it." Abu Bakr closed his eyes. In that moment, his decision was made. The weight of a crown. Being a king in Mali was not a ceremonial role. It was a burden of responsibility, the guardian of a rich empire, the protector of millions. But Abu Bakr understood something profound. A king cannot chase the horizon if his feet are tied to a throne. He knew that the throne would stop him from leaving. The tradition, the advisors, the rival factions, all would fight to keep him home. So he considered the unthinkable. The decision that shocked the empire. One morning, Abu Bakr stood before his council. He wore no royal crown, no golden robes, only a simple white cloth, the symbol of a man ready to start a journey. His voice echoed through the chamber. "I have decided to step down as king. My place is not on the throne. My place is across the sea." The advisors gasped. Some fell to their knees in disbelief. Some cried out in protest. Some begged him to reconsider. How could a king, the ruler of the richest empire on earth, abandon his throne for a journey into darkness? But Abu Bakr II remained calm. He said, "I will not abandon Mali. I will strengthen it. Mansa Musa will rule in my place." The court erupted again, in a mix of shock and confusion. Mansa Musa, the quiet, thoughtful prince? The man who historians today call the richest man who ever lived was now being handed the throne by a king determined to chase the unknown. Appointing Mansa Musa. Abu Bakr called Musa to the throne room. He placed the golden crown upon his head and spoke words that would shape African history. "You will rule Mali with wisdom. I will explore the world so that our people may grow beyond their borders." Mansa Musa bowed deeply, tears in his eyes. He told Abu Bakr, "If you find new land, bring back knowledge. I will protect your empire until your return." The two embraced, a moment of unity between rulers that would echo through centuries. The reaction of the people. When the news spread through Mali, the empire erupted in disbelief. Merchants were stunned. Nobles were outraged. Fishermen were terrified, but the common people, the storytellers, the sailors, the dreamers, felt something else. Hope. Hope that their king was not running away from his kingdom, but running toward the future. The last night before the final expedition. On the final night in his palace, Abu Bakr walked through the silent halls, touching the carved wooden pillars, the clay walls, the woven rugs. He had lived in these walls all his life, but now he felt like a traveler passing through. He whispered to himself, "A king's life is small, but the world is vast." He then removed the golden bracelets from his wrists, folded his royal robe, and placed the crown on a stone pedestal. He was no longer king. Tomorrow, he would be an explorer. The dawn of a new destiny. As the sun rose, the drums of Mali thundered across the riverbanks. Thousands gathered near the docks to see their former king walk toward the greatest fleet ever built. He looked back only once, not with regret, but with pride. The throne would continue without him, but his destiny lay across the ocean. He stepped into his ship, placed his hand on its wooden rail, and breathed in the salty air deeply. This was not the end of his story. This was the beginning. The beginning of a journey that would take him into the unknown darkness of the Atlantic. A journey that would lead to the greatest disappearance in African history. The moment Abu Bakr II stepped down from his throne, the entire empire held its breath. What would he do next? Where would he go? Was this truly the end of his rule, or the beginning of something far greater? The answer became clear within days. The king, now an explorer, called his most skilled shipbuilders, the master craftsmen of Mali, and gave them a single command: prepare the greatest fleet the world has ever seen. There was silence, then shock, then whispers. But the king's voice was firm, unwavering. "We will not sail with 200 ships. We will sail with 2,000. The order that shook the empire. 2,000 ships, an impossible number, a number unheard of in any African, Arab, or European record of the time. Fishermen stared in disbelief. Merchants froze in fear and admiration. Generals looked at each other, unsure how to respond. But Abu Bakr II did not wait for approval. He walked to the edge of the Niger River, placed his hand on the water and whispered, "This river flows to the sea. Now the sea will carry us to the world beyond." And then the work began. The dockyards become a city of wood and fire. The docks of Mali transformed overnight. What was once a quiet riverside exploded into a thunderous symphony of hammers, saws, chisels, and flames. For weeks, the air was filled with the sound of axes splitting timber, the clang of iron nails being forged, the creaking of wooden beams, the roar of furnaces melting metal, the rhythmic chants of workers. Shipbuilders worked day and night, taking shifts so the construction never stopped. Villages near the river grew rapidly as thousands of workers arrived. Carpenters, blacksmiths, rope makers, sail weavers, oil merchants, resin collectors, painters, and woodcutters. It became the largest industrial project in medieval African history. The design of the ships. Abu Bakr personally oversaw the design. Each ship was crafted with two goals: endurance, to survive storms far beyond the coast capacity, to carry enough supplies to found a colony. The hulls were reinforced with layers of thick wood sealed with resin from forest trees. The sails were woven from desert-grown cotton, dyed in colors that resisted salt water. The ropes were twisted from baobab fibers and tested against heavy loads. These ships were not made for rivers. They were made for the Atlantic. An army of supplies. Abu Bakr knew the ocean would not be kind, so he ordered the gathering of enough supplies to last months, maybe years. The supply ships carried grain, rice, and dried meats, water stored in sealed clay jars, livestock for breeding, fishing nets and hooks, tools for building settlements, rope, wood, tool, cloth, and metal, seeds, plants, and herbs, gold for trade with any new civilizations they might find. Every detail was planned with military precision. He was not sending explorers to take a quick look and return. He was preparing a civilization to journey into the unknown. The chosen crew, 30,000 men, with 2,000 ships. Abu Bakr needed thousands of skilled men. He chose the strongest sailors, the wisest navigators, the bravest warriors, the most dedicated farmers, scribes to record discoveries, artists to document the journey, cooks, builders, healers, and water collectors. Some historians estimate the final fleet carried nearly 30,000 people. Not an expedition, a migration. A bold, impossible attempt to cross an ocean before anyone else. The training begins. For months, Abu Bakr trained alongside his men. He learned how to tie knots for storm survival, how to read the stars without instruments, how to sense wind direction from smell and temperature, how to repair sails in high winds, how to detect changing currents, how to steer against waves. He wanted to be more than a passenger. He wanted to be a leader, a commander of the fleet, a master of the sea. The empire watches. Stories spread through the empire. The king is becoming a sailor. He trains like a common man. He sleeps on the docks. He eats with the shipbuilders. Children gathered on the riverbanks watching the rising forest of masts. Poets composed verses about the king who gave up the throne to chase the horizon. Some admired him. Some feared for him. Some believed he was touched by destiny. Some believed he was cursed by curiosity. But no one could deny the truth. Africa had never seen anything like this. The fleet finally completes. After months, some say years, the ships were ready. 2,000 vessels lined the banks of the Niger, their sails folded, their decks polished, their hulls shining in the sun. The sight was breathtaking. It looked like a wooden kingdom floating on water, a nation on the move, a dream turned into reality. The night before departure, as the fleet prepared to leave, Abu Bakr walked the riverbank alone. He touched the sides of the ships, whispered blessings to the men, and paused to watch the moon's reflection on the water. He knew this might be the last night he ever saw his homeland, but he felt no fear, only purpose, only destiny, only the pull of the horizon calling him forward. The final command. At dawn, the drums of Mali boomed across the river. Horn blasts shook the air. Chants rose from thousands of men as they boarded the fleet. Abu Bakr stood on the deck of the lead ship. He raised his hand toward the sky and shouted, "Let the world witness, we sail not for ourselves, but for the future of Mali." The sails rose, the ropes tightened, the masts swayed, and slowly, the fleet began to drift toward the Atlantic. Thousands on the shore watched in awe as 2,000 ships moved like a massive wooden army toward the open sea. This was not just a voyage. This was history in motion, a moment unmatched in African exploration, a chapter lost to time, but never forgotten by legend. The greatest fleet Africa ever built was now sailing west, toward mystery, toward darkness, toward the unknown world, where they would vanish forever. The morning of the final voyage was unlike anything the Mali Empire had ever witnessed. For days, the riverbanks had been crowded. Thousands of families lining the shores, merchants pausing their trade, scholars with scrolls in hand, soldiers standing guard in complete silence. But on this morning, there was a strange stillness in the air, an unease, a sense that something historic, something irreversible, was about to unfold. The sun rose slowly behind the dunes, casting long shadows over the fleet that stretched farther than the eye could see. 2,000 ships, a city on water, a kingdom floating toward destiny. The final inspection. Abu Bakr II walked the wooden docks one last time. He moved ship to ship, greeting sailors, offering prayers, touching carved symbols on the hulls for good fortune. Where a king once stood in gold, now walked a man dressed like a simple traveler, light garments, a weathered cloak, a modest head covering to shield him from sun and spray. But his presence carried the weight of an empire. To each crew he gave the same words: "If we do not return, know that we sailed for knowledge, and that knowledge is worth our lives." Many wept. Some bowed. Some whispered silent prayers. Others stared at him with pride, knowing they were part of something the world had never seen. The drums of departure. As the sun climbed higher, the royal drummers took their places along the cliffs overlooking the water. A single drum beat echoed across the river. Doom. Then another. Doom. The rhythm grew louder, echoing across the dunes and the water, vibrating through the hearts of every soul present. This was the ancient call of departure, the signal used for generals, warriors, and kings who were leaving home and may never return. But this time, the drums shook for something far larger. They beat for an empire about to lose its king to the horizon. The empire gathers. People poured in from distant villages, walking miles through heat and dust just to catch a final glimpse of the king they loved. Mothers held their children. Elders leaned on staffs. Merchants fell silent. Warriors bowed their heads. From the cliffs, it looked as if the entire empire had gathered to witness the beginning of the greatest expedition Africa had ever known. Some came to pray, some to cry, some simply to see with their own eyes the 2,000 ships that legends would one day speak of. The signal to move. Abu Bakr stood tall on the lead ship. He raised his right arm. The drums fell silent. A wind swept across the river, lifting the edges of sails and carrying the scent of salt from the distant sea. Then he whispered one word: "Now." The sailors cut the ropes. The anchors rose. The oars dipped into the water. And the mighty fleet began to drift. Slowly at first, then with growing speed. The river carried them toward the open Atlantic. A roar erupted from the shores. A mix of cheers, cries, prayers, and songs. Some shouted, "Return with glory. Bring us new lands. May the sea treat you kindly." And some whispered, "Please come home." The transition to the ocean. The fleet traveled down the Niger until the gentle river merged with the mighty Atlantic. Here, the waters grew darker. The waves grew higher. The wind carried stories of storms yet to come. But the sailors were not afraid. They were led by a man who feared nothing. A man who had given up an empire for the chance to rewrite history. The last night before the horizon, his journey stands as one of humanity's greatest mysteries. A story of exploration, ambition, and destiny. A story the world nearly forgot.